Today we'll be breaking down maybe the art of the pump and what it might look like. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Joining me today, of course, is going to be Mr. Evan Aldo. He'll be jumping in here in a second. Before we get started, though, I want to thank our sponsor, and that is Uphold. If you're brand new to crypto, this is a really good place to start. You've got a couple of exchanges out there you can go into. The cool thing about Uphold, though, that I will say, is that sometimes what they'll do is get you the best price. So they're out there trying to find the best price for you. And the cool concept behind it is while you're waiting on the sidelines, your US dollar balance is gaining 4.4 APY. So that's a big deal, and there's no lockups, and it's also FDIC insured. So check it out, uphold.com. Use our link down below for some special offers. All right, joining me today, of course, is Mr. Evan Aldo, coming in from abroad. How are you, Evan?
Doing amazing. Oh man, this is one of the way once every few years you get it where Bitcoin did not make a lower low, S&P 500, Nasdaq are crashing. How can you not be bullish right now?
Yeah, that's a good sign right there. Listen, you guys, if you have not seen Evan Aldo's channel, I want you to stop right now what you're doing. I know you're thinking, Evan, Bear Evan, Bull Evan. Well, right now you can find out what Evan's talking about all the time by just subscribing to his channel. Go over and just search Evan Aldo over on YouTube. Crypto trading market cipher tutorials. He's got all kinds of cool things there if you want to get into trading and understand how to do it, or just, hey, sit back and watch his trades. That's a great thing to do. So this first clip is talking about China's tariff retaliation. Take a look.
If history is the guide, and you looked at global trade rates, global trade numbers, 1930, and then looked in 1931, this goes to the retaliatory issue that we're talking about here. Global trade dropped in 12 months by 60%. That's the number. That's the data. And so when you look and see what the risk is that this all portends, which is man-made, completely self-made, that's the risk in front of us.
Oh, I was just looking at the S&P 500. You can kind of see it right here, guys. It's been falling off the cliff really since February the 19th, which is where it reached its high at around 6,100. We are now 1,000 points down on the S&P 500. That is an insane fall off. And for the fact that we've been able to hold this position, we're going to chart Bitcoin in a minute. For Bitcoin to hold in this area while the S&P is cratering like this is a very interesting times ahead. One thing to look at, Evan, is this right here. Trump says China played it wrong. They panicked. He says the one thing they cannot afford to do is panic. And this is a 34% tariff that's been imposed on U.S. imports. So what are your thoughts, first of all? Were you pro-tariffs when you first saw these? What was your position?
You know, I'm pro-tariffs in the sense that I think it would likely bring inflation down, and likely, which seems like what Trump's trying to do, likely bring inflation down, likely have more rate cuts sooner, and likely inject more money into the system. So I think you need to be careful with tariffs. I think what Trump is doing is, let's go really hard, and now let's try to immediately negotiate after you see that inflation. What's happening now? They're renegotiating with Vietnam, and it's probably everything with Trump is obviously known to be up for renegotiation. So I think this could be one of those places that this is the peak fear for it. And as Trump takes a cooler stance in the coming weeks, then we'll see more negotiations and things get a little bit lighter.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because if you do read The Art of the Deal, negotiation, getting to the negotiation table is one of the first tactics that you utilize because nothing can be done until you get both parties at a table. Trump says right now every country called to negotiate tariffs. So I don't know if this is true or not, but if it is, if he's true, then at least that part of it worked. Now, whether or not we get a deal done and we have something that can subside a lot of this pressure on the markets is still up in the air. I want to jump to Bitcoin because as we see the market starting to crush here on the S&P 500 with securities, Bitcoin bulls are defending 80K. So what does the chart look like right now?
The chart has not looked any different than it's looked at for the past few days. I mean, the thing that we're looking at right here, you got your little trigger wave forming over on our 20-hour, your money flow is coming up. So it generally looks like you're more likely going to break upward from this range that we've been in and hopefully get back up to 94K, maybe within the next week. 94K is what I'm looking at. We could go to some of these light, smaller time frames as well. You get a nice trigger wave forming over here, and your 6 hour that should form relatively soon. And then you just look at the more zoomed in version, money flow coming up. You could easily, that 94K within a week or so, easily could get there. If we zoom out, look at the macro a little bit. I mean, we're still in that thing we talked about last time here, which is, you had your typical beginning of your post-halving year, about a 30% correction, and now you're still trying to come up. Now it's been slow, but I think as we get this trigger wave, which is forming right here on the weekly, we could hopefully do, a nice, I mean, it's probably a little bit too optimistic to think it's going to go up that much, but a more diminished return version of this up to hopefully instead of June, probably the end of year for this, this trajectory. But I still think, 120K, hopefully within a few months, and then 150K by end of year is absolutely still in the cards here.
All right, so you're talking 150 by end of year. That's almost a 2x on Bitcoin. What an amazing run that would be for a year asset. If you look year-to-date asset on Bitcoin, even comparison to gold, which is what everybody's kind of looking at right now. Gold, of course, I think slipped down. Let me see if I can flip over to the gold chart real quick.
It did,
yeah,
yep.
down. Yeah, it slipped down. So what was that? Off of the 3,100, it's back down to right at 3,000, still holding. So very interesting times right now, Evan. And I think the point that we're really in right now is how does this play out within the traditional investment market? When you look at the S&P 500, the Mag 7, could we start to see some of that money bleed off into some of these risk assets? Specifically, I shouldn't say risk assets to a certain extent, because I think ETH and Bitcoin are where a lot of this could be going. But of course, everybody is leaning in on how hard this tariff is going to hit inflation. Now, you just mentioned you think it might soften inflation. I'm on the other side. I think this may hurt inflation, but I'm not sure that Jerome Powell will qualify it the same way in terms of, that it's transitory is really what I think it'll boil down to. I want to play a clip for you from Jerome Powell from this morning. Take a look.
We face a highly uncertain outlook with elevated risks of both higher unemployment and higher inflation. The new administration is in the process of implementing substantial policy changes in 4 distinct areas: trade, immigration, fiscal policy, and regulation. We have stressed that it will be very difficult to assess the likely economic effects of higher tariffs until there is greater certainty about the details, such as what will be tariffed, at what level, and for what duration, and the extent of any retaliation from our trading partners. While uncertainty remains elevated, it is now becoming clear that tariff increases will be significantly larger than expected. And the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth.
All right, so you can see it. Slower growth, that concerns me to a certain extent. More impact from inflation. Do you think this is going to cause the Fed to slow their plan on a cut coming in, even though we could be seeing a lot of manipulation in the market?
Well, I mean, I like to look at the numbers and the betting odds and the charts, and I do see the argument for tariffs making inflation to get hotter. But when I look at the first thing that's crazy to look at, I just want to show you real quick. If we look at our NASDAQ, it's down about 20% right now. Let's look at our NASDAQ versus the DXY, which is the buying power of the NASDAQ. It's only down 18%, which shows that inflation, it's rare you get this. I mean, back in 22, the NASDAQ went way down, way farther down against the DXY than the then it went down on its USD pair. So it's kind of the opposite right now, which is showing a slowing of inflation. And if you look at betting odds, the betting odds are going up for a rate cut potentially in May. I don't think you're going to get a rate cut in May, but that could be the end of quantitative tightening potentially. So I don't know what Powell's doing. I think he's being cautious, but I still think that I don't think it's going to cause bad inflation. I think these negotiations are going to send a lot of money back into the market. That's what I think.
Well, that's the point right there you're hitting on is deals are already starting to come out. Here we are Friday, just 2 days in, and we're already seeing Asia become very proactive. Cambodia, Vietnam, both have come to the table. A lot of, I will say, concessions from Asia that have been strong trading partners, and we are starting to see that. But the real question is when that Fed cut would happen and whether or not they'll step in. This is CNBC talking about just that very point. Take a look.
No, I do not think that's going to happen. I think that's a market in wishful thinking, hoping that Fed bails them out. I think prudence on the part of the Fed would be to stand tight until we sort this all out, because I think inflationary risks are strong and inflation expectations have been moving in the wrong direction.
They're pricing in a 99% chance of a June rate cut. What's the earliest you would anticipate a rate cut would come? How long will it take the Fed to really feel like they know what's happening?
Look, I think it's well past June, and I've said a few times, I'm not sure they're going to get any cuts off this year because they also have to think about the inflation side of the mandate. And they were late to the game the last time around. Some of their inflation credibility was nicked, let's put it that way. And I don't think they want that to happen again.
All right, so you can see it right there. We've got some analysts out there pointing to very little potential. Then you've got analysts out there that are pointing to, oh yeah, we're going to have 3 cuts, 4 cuts this year. So again, typical that we have seen. I'm not saying that we know better than they, but I'm just saying that the decision, or I should say the split right now between pro and con on the cut is definitely coming in. Here was an interesting statement right here. Truly incredible. President Trump 10 minutes ago. Fed Chair Powell, always late to cut rates, cut interest rates. Jerome, stop playing politics. This is the president calling out the Fed chair. And Powell says, hey, it's too soon. Of course, we played the clip there. But the point is, he's getting at is they're publicly fighting about interest rates right now. I think Trump needs this to be able to pull this all together. A couple of negotiations out of the EU would be good. More negotiations out of Asia and some of the key trading partners in the Middle East. If he pulls that off and he gets a rate cut, that is going to be a boom market for sure. What would you say if that were to occur?
So I think it's almost we're already seeing the negotiations. I think that's almost a done deal. And that clip before is funny because she's like, yeah, the betting odds are 99.9%. You're going to get at least 1 rate cut this year. And he's like, nope, no shit.
Nope, no rate cut.
I mean, come on. I mean, if a guy bets $100 on no rate cut, he's going to make a lot of money, but we'll see. But no, I think we're going to see. Well, the other thing to realize too is if you look at the pattern for Bitcoin here, I just want to show you quickly that generally after your first rate cut, you do get a little bit of a pullback. So let's say we get a lot of anticipation of rate cuts and we have a nice rally over the next few months into, let's say, a new all-time high, May or something. Maybe you come up to even 120 by early July, June, or so, right around that June Fed meeting. Let's say we get up to 120 or slightly make a new all-time high, 117. Then right after the first rate cut, what normally happens, the markets do see a pullback. So you see a pullback, that typical summer lull, some more fear, and then you finally realign with things and you get, I mean, this would coincide with generally what we do in the post-halving years. And then there's your case for 150K. That's what I think is something like this would be the most likely scenario based on that.
All right, so that's, I mean, for traders, even for swing traders, that's a really good outlook for potentially for Bitcoin. Would that also play, well, I want to get into the altcoins here in a second. We're going to talk specifically about Ethereum. But before we do that, I want to play this clip from Trump talking about the market boom. Take a look.
I think it's going very well. It was an operation, like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing. I said this would exactly be the way it is. We have $6 or $7 trillion coming into our country, and we've never seen anything like it. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal? They've taken advantage of us for many, many years. For many years, we've been at the wrong side of the ball, and I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be unbelievable. The thing that people have to talk about, we're up almost to $7 trillion of investment coming into our country. And you'll see how it's going to turn out. Our country's going to boom.
Man, Trump has this uncanny way of just almost manifesting these things into existence. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it in many of his deals that he's done in business. We've seen it in his election politics. It's a very interesting situation right now. You look at this, because after that, you kind of think, I think a lot of people saw so much blood in the water and still seeing it. We saw 4.7 billion in stocks coming in from retail yesterday. So literally going back over to the S&P, they're buying that dip right there, all the way down here coming in. And of course, is this the bottom on the S&P? That's my question. Do you think we could recoil back into that 4,500 mark?
When I look at my chart, I think there's a good shot of hitting the bottom on the S&P 500. Let me just put it up real quick. You get into that point that we're hitting, it's just such a huge area. And historically, unless you think we're going into a recession, which I know some people do, but 15, 16% drop down. I mean, that's huge back to August of 24. So unless you think, it's going to really be really, really bad, 460, 450, then most likely you would recover here. And I think that the Bitcoin holding up is probably a good sign of that as well. And then all you need really is Trump to just be a little less hard on the tariffs, have some negotiations, take them down a bit.
Yeah.
And I don't see how that would not have the market recover.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's almost a manufactured dip if you look at this, because if he knows, because who knows how many deals they're working right now on the backside. And, listen, that's exactly how Trump has kind of played his dance card recently. With this much going in retail, going back into the market on these dips, Ethereum now potentially looking different. So long-term potential, experts believe that ETH price recovery is in line after we saw almost a 1,600 met again, even though ETH is somewhat holding right now. What do you think about Ethereum right now? Would this be a play for you if you didn't own Ethereum right now, Evan? What would you do?
It absolutely would be. I would DCA Ethereum probably from now until June if I own none of it right now. I mean, there's a good shot that this could be a double bottom right here. And then if you can break above this over here, you can break back up to, 24, 2,500. And then when we zoom out a little bit, we actually confirmed a really rare bullish sign a little while ago. Deep anchor wave right here in the last one, that was a huge recovery back. You jumped up a crazy amount. Let's see if we were to do that. That's back up to 3,300 in a few months, hopefully. You could even get wilder with this, because if you look at the last time before that really deep anchor wave right there, this was the exact bottom in 2022. And it kind of feels like that for ETH a little bit in terms of, how down it's been and how much hope people have given up. Now, this could be way too optimistic. I don't know if you're going to get up to 4,000, by the end of May, but crazier things have happened. I do think you could have a big rally. And then if we want to be more macro here, maybe we get up to somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000, hopefully by June. Then you see your summer lull. We come back down to, 2,800 or something. And then you could jump back up to new all-time highs into the end of the year. I still think potentially, it's hard to say exactly where. I think October's a little bit too early, but I potentially think 5 to 7K still could be on the table.
Let's go on over to a couple other things I want to hit on, and that is Hedera. Hedera, of course, and OnlyFans have now teamed up to go after TikTok. Now, this is another blockchain. We've seen a lot of blockchains into play, including Polkadot, now Ethereum, XRP, all playing into a potential bid or participating in bids for TikTok. First of all, let's take a look at the Hedera list chart, because I think we've got a lot of people that are big HBAR fans. Do you like this token right now? How would you hold this?
Based on the fundamentals you talked about, that I feel like sometimes when you see the OF part, you kind of run into a retail trap or whatever. But it did have its correction. I do like HBAR. I think it can eventually come back here. You're forming a trigger wave on the weekly. I like how that looks. Pretty big area you're jumping off of. Let's see what our correction was right here. It was about 60%. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here. On the weekly, I think the main thing you want to map out here is the weekly trigger wave. And that hopefully, in the next few months, it would not be impossible for us to come back up to that 42-cent range. And then hopefully, continue some type of path like that into the end of the year. Maybe, I don't know. It could be a little bit. It's risky. It's risky to say that you're going to go up 8 to 10x, but it's possible if you do make a new all-time high. Be careful with sometimes they lure retail into these traps with the OF and the weird crap like that. But I think there's potential. I think there's a lot of potential. It looks good in the short term too. So I think, you definitely got a good shot of getting back up to 20 cents in this month, and then hopefully back up to those highs by the end of May. I think there's a good shot. So yeah.
Hey, let's talk about Solana. Right now, Solana's Trust is going to happen. The S1 is now to convert to Solana Trust under Grayscale. This means an ETF coming very soon, potentially. This is probably not too soon for Solana. It's struggled to regain its highs, and it's definitely kind of been in a position where it has not been performing. And of course, it was one of the ones that took one of the most hits here over the last few weeks. What does the chart on Solana hold right now? Would you buy in on Solana if you did not hold it right now?
I would buy in Solana. It would be a DCA. I think ETH may outperform it, and I'll tell you why just right after we look at the
Whoa.
Solana
Wait a minute.
chart here.
What you just said. You can't just
ETH,
throw that
for
out
a few
there.
months. I think ETH may
Okay.
outperform it for a few months.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, that's a big statement right there. That's a huge statement
short
from
term.
people. Yeah. Okay. In the short term, still, that's a big.
I'll show you
statement.
why in just a second.
All right. Let me see
Okay.
it.
So when we look at our chart here, so this is, it takes double bottom pattern. I mean, it could make a lower low, 109, to like get more liquidations, but it's looking on the daily. You're going to get a nice bull div. I think you got a technical target. This is going to be just to show you guys like a nice little swing trade here. Stop loss probably like around 106, and then you could try to ride this up to 154, maybe even back up to 188 right there. So that looks pretty good. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ELXs. Usually when you see these on the daily or a large time frame, it means you're close to a trend reversal. So that's pretty good. And when you zoom out here a bit, it was similar to a lot of other coins. The weekly is going to give you kind of a deep anchor wave relatively soon. So that could give you a nice rally into August, maybe a slightly higher high, and then into end of year. I think a lot of these trajectories, 400, maybe 600 would be the absolute highest I could see. I'm looking at more of a 400 for here. 3 to 4x would be good. The thing I wanted to show you though on ETH, Sol versus ETH, I believe it was rejecting from a pretty big point. So yeah, it was rejecting from this point. When you zoom in a little bit, I don't know, some of these time frames do look like you will break down, maybe bleed, probably not a crazy amount, but maybe bleed like 30, 40% against ETH, maybe.
Okay.
So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see. I'm excited about ETH right now. But
All right, so that's good. ETH is the winner. Let's talk about Avalanche. We just did a video on this, guys. Go back and watch this because this is a very, we put a lot of research into this one, and there's some very intriguing things happening in Japan, specifically in the banking ecosystem. Avalanche is tied into this pretty closely with a new launch of a stablecoin with some of their banking partners there. With that happening, along with some other things I think that Avalanche may be talking about releasing, is this a token that you would jump into right now? It has also been fairly depressed off of its high, holding at about $18 right now, sideways.
yeah, I think it's a great buy. Yes, definitely. I mean, it's looked like the last time we looked at this, it's looked at like one of the best tokens because you have your money flow coming up on your 2-week. You're also forming another wave right there. The last time we had a nice jump up. So if you can kind of repeat, and it could be even better. It could be like this over here. And then you could even, theoretically by the end of May, you can get up to like $60 to $80. That would be best case scenario. Let's be a little bit more conservative. Hopefully by May, June, you get up to these areas. Then, summer, a little lull, and then one last kind of jump up into the end of the year. I think that maybe a 10x could be on the table. I could be being too optimistic, but I think you got a very, I would give it 70%. You can get back up to those all-time highs and like 40 to 50, maybe a 10x. This is looking really good. There's a lot of good stuff behind this. I'd be very surprised if this doesn't do what we want it to do here. So everything looks good. Daily looks good. I mean, you could try to, just like that Solana potential swing trade, you could do, stop loss below this area right there and then try to really run this up and hold it for a while. So, yeah.
Let's talk about XRP for a minute. I want to show you guys something. I'm looking at RLUSD. This is, of course, you guys can go check this chart out over at app.rwa.xyz. And if you look further down in here, I want to zoom in on something very intriguing. This right here. So remember, we saw a print right here just the other day, popped up to around 244 mil. Then it popped up again just the other day, yesterday, to almost 300 million. So what we're talking about is something is brewing inside of the XRP ledger and RLUSD. As you can see, all this riding on ETH, so both play well. But the potential, last time we saw this move, it was a listing, the use of RLUSD on Kraken. Maybe they're getting ready for a major exchange listing to where RLUSD will be a trading pair. What are your thoughts on XRP right now?
Yeah, I think it's bullish news. I mean, I think XRP is going to do well, like a lot of other coins. And, right now, the big thing for XRP is it's been in this range. You're forming a trigger wave on the 6-day, which I like. I think that's pretty good. It looks good when you go down the time frames, potential continuation. I think once you break out of this area, your next big target is going to be around. Oh, really? Yeah, you got one target somewhere between like $4.50 to $6 is I think where you're going to end up by the end of the year. Maybe we jump and recover into May. We get back to that 330 mark or something. And then you have a little summer lull, it's a little bit boring again, which this thing is it's a weird price mover. It does some weird things. Do something like that. And then end a year, you have your jump up to 450, maybe even, $6. Anyone who says this is going above $6, I think they're being a little bit too optimistic. That would be, over a $400 billion market cap above that point. So, but no, I do think it's going to do well though.
Well, it's one to kind of keep an eye on. We're going to continue to cover this and many more. By the way, if you guys, I'd like to know your position. Evan's so bullish on ETH. In the comments down below, let me know if you are bullish on ETH or bearish, because there's kind of a shift between the audience saying that ETH might be one of the least performers in this market. But again, I always love to get you guys' feedback. Make sure and subscribe to the show. Evan, thanks a lot for jumping in today. We appreciate it.
Always great to be on. Thanks so much, Paul.
Yep, you bet. All right, you guys, as I said, if you're not in the Diamond Circle, that's the place to be. It's a great email list that we use. We send out updates all the time. Additionally, we have a Telegram group. And the Telegram group, one Telegram group, there's no more, just one. The link is down below, so only follow that link that's on our channel. Don't look at anything out there on Telegram if it doesn't come from us, because there is a lot of scammers out there, so watch out for that. And of course, follow me on X, @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.